Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the what if. Prologue. The sun has once more shined with the luster of its prime, and life has once again begun to sprout from the erstwhile blood-drenched and barren soil. The human race, it would seem, has weathered and almost forgotten the terrible wars waged by their ancestors in the distant past that threatened their very existence. Though by some peculiar twist of fate, has also united them as a single species and triumphed upon the malign and great entities that seek to smother their flame. Or so they say. As time passed by, legends became the accepted truths. Paradoxically, as humanity developed and advanced, these so-called accepted truths has become legends once more. It is intriguing how the age of the shinobi came to its untimely end, almost 10,000 years ago. Naruto Uzumaki, the greatest hero known to this era, has vanished without a trace at the conclusion of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. Grand and majestic monuments of him was commissioned and erected in the heart of every hidden village, not only to commemorate his valor but to serve as a potent inspiration to all aspiring ninjas. Though people can't help but wonder what happened to the young shinobi. It was a general conjecture that he, along with the rest of the allied shinobi forces, has perished, sacrificing their lives to subdue and seal the ten-tailed beast. However, there are some who believe that he is still alive and will return once more when his people needed him most. The truth, however, is a bitter pill to swallow, for he never came back. Not in this timeline, at least. A mysterious plague then swept the land like lightning from a cloudless sky, killing countless in its wake. Soon war broke between the survivors, competing for resources. Cities and settlements were razed and civilization began to decline and rapidly devolve. The earth was painted red from the menagerie of violent deaths. What happened next, however, is even grimmer. An unknown series of cataclysms occurred that shattered and sunken the elemental nations beneath the unforgiving ocean, entombing all but a few of its denizens in a watery mausoleum. The handful of survivors fled to distant lands where they encountered and interacted with the primitive locals. With their knowledge of chakra and more advanced sciences like metallurgy and medicine, they uplifted these primitives and their descendants ruled over them as kings. However, as decades passed, a new problem arose that effectively erased the legacy and all but a few signs of the elemental nations. For reasons unknown, the chakra levels of subsequent generations is gradually dampening, and thus their children and their children's progeny has become weaker over time. They attempted to rectify this by crafting technological devices meant to amplify their existing chakra and by carefully managing their gene pool through selective marriages and later on inbreeding, but to no avail. Chakra has continuously diminished until it became no longer existent. Furthermore, all knowledge, memory and records of the survivors and their descendants literally ceased to exist as time continued to flow. As if it was the sublime machinations of a great and terrible power who, by reasons known only to itself, willed them to fade from existence. All that remained of their legacy are the chakra-focusing artifacts they crafted eons ago, which was discovered later on by modern archaeologists and dismissed as meager works of art or ceremonial contrivances, not knowing its higher purpose. Naruto, a calm and mysterious voice whispered. Naruto found himself in a dark and eerie environment. The only thing breaking the silence is what seemed to be the sound of dropping water and an unseen flowing river. Who are you? What is this place? Am I dead? Naruto asked in bewilderment. I am Hagoromo Otsutsuki, and we are in your dream, within the depths of your subconscious mind, the voice said in an astute tone as he revealed himself to be the Sage of Six Paths. The Jubi. I must, Naruto said frantically, recollecting his predicament before the dream. It is too late for that, my child. Almost 10 millennia has passed since then, the sage explained to Naruto, which startled the blonde shinobi into disbelief. No, that's impossible. I was there. I just passed out a few minutes, hours at the most, that's all. Naruto protested in incredulity, for what the sage said to him makes no sense. Then memories of the final battle flashed into his head. The 10 tails, was sealed within me, he muttered as reality finally trickled in. Yes, you are now the Jinchuriki of the One-Eyed God. You must use its power wisely. Though, I'm afraid that what I have told you is no less than the truth, the sage exclaimed in a solemn tone. And you waited this long to tell me that, old man? Why? Naruto inquired in anguish with a sorrow-filled voice and a trace of brewing rage. A dark god barred me from this sphere. He is immensely powerful, I was no match. I am only able to form a connection with you just now because he is temporarily distracted for some reason. I fear that it won't last. Even as we speak I can sense that he's already aware of my presence and soon he will banish me once more. But before he could, I have decided to transfer my remaining power to you. You shall once again be the protector of mankind, Hagoromo said in a calm and philosophical tone as he proceeded to gift Naruto his remaining power. The sage brought his hands together and placed them into Naruto's forehead, then proceeded to transfer his chakra, wisdom and an aspect of his personality to guide the young shinobi in his tasks. Naruto felt a warm sensation as the power of the great sage flowed within him and revitalized his body. A golden shroud of chakra began to engulf him. Then it formed into a light gold-colored coat with a dark-colored bodysuit that covers of his torso underneath, or that's what it superficially looks like, reaching down to his arms and to his knuckles, and down his legs, stopping just above his sandals which also changed color. A light-colored circle appeared where his seal was placed, as well as golden magatama markings on his collar. Subsequently, truth-seeking balls began to form. They were orbs of black malleable chakra the size of a fist and containing all 5 nature transformations and yin-yang release. Cool, Naruto amusedly exclaimed as he held out his hand and a truth-seeking ball hovered above it. What should I do now? He then queried the sage, unsure of how he'll proceed. First you must wake up. The sage resonated with a smile as he slowly fades and vanished. Bimini Island 1855. Faintly glowing, rippled purple eyes slowly opened. Naruto looked around and although it is pitch black his eyes were perfectly capable of perceiving the environment. He found himself in an underground cavern of glossy obsidian riddled with clusters of hexagonal crystal stalagmites and stalactites, and a series of interconnected subterranean rivers coursed within the natural edifice. The sound of the flowing streams, along with the rhythmic falling drops of water from the crystal stalagmites created a pleasing harmonic melody. Shinra Tensei, Naruto instinctively exclaimed with a strong commanding voice. A huge shockwave of repelling force emanated from his body and smashed into the rocks above him like a giant's hammer. This created a large geyser of dust and rubble that was spotted by a passing steamship, the Isabel, who was on her route to England after a largely unsuccessful expedition from the southern Americas. Naruto emerged from the crater and incoherently limped for some distance before he collapsed from the strain of activating his Rinnegan for the first time and the stupor caused by suddenly unleashing vast amounts of chakra after his millennia-long inertness. Sir, there is some kind of explosion on the island, a crewman peering on a spy glass yelled. A man named William Kennedy, who was the head of the said expedition, took his spy glass and peered in it, seeing an expanding cloud of dust akin to that elicited by barrels of gunpowder that has been lit. He decided to investigate and gave the order. Captain, turn starboard into that island and instruct your men to prepare the boats. Aye, sir. The captain concurred and began cascading orders to the rest of his crew. The Isabel seemed to bristle with life as her crew was roused to activity. The helmsman turned the ship starboard and headed to the island as ordered, while others of the crew prepared to lower the jollyboats to ferry people once they get into a sufficient proximity to the island. An exploration team was assembled to investigate the mysterious explosion. Leading it was William Kennedy himself and a rather stout Spanish gentleman named Gaspard Villalobos, who's also the ship's first mate and second in command. Once the jollyboats hit shore they instantly noticed Naruto lying senseless on the beach. It's just a young lad, no older than my boy, said by a middle-aged crewman as they approached and got a closer inspection of the shinobi. Maybe one of the locals? A relatively naive crewman inquired. Nay, he doesn't look like it, the first replied. The boy's features are distinctly Caucasian, and the clothes he's wearing, well, I never seen the likes of it before. He could be a survivor from a shipwreck. This part of the world is known for its sporadic and unpredictable storms after all. Gaspard Villalobos mused as he tried to deduce the predicament that befallen the golden-haired boy. Bring him to the ship. Let's save our questions when he wake up, William Kennedy said, looking at the unconscious Naruto. Naruto was carried in one of the jollyboat and transported back to the Isabel while the rest of the crew stayed on the island to investigate. They found nothing unusual except a fairly large crater, the size of a house. Found anything interesting, sir? The captain greeted William Kennedy as he returned and boarded the ship. None, save for a depression caused by the earlier explosion we've witnessed. What of the boy? Our guest has regained consciousness though he's still quite weak. Dr. Newton said he will be fine but would need a few days to regain his strength. Very well. William Kennedy nodded to the captain. Steamship Isabel. The next day. After some hours of rest, Kennedy and Villalobos decided to give their guest a visit. How is he, doctor? Villalobos inquired. It's amazing. He shouldn't even be able to stand at this state, but it appears that he has fully recuperated in just a short amount of time. Dr. Michael Newton, a lanky, blonde-haired Englishman, said, astounded at how fast Naruto has recovered. He later migrated to the U.S. and settled in California a few years after the expedition. He is Mike Newton's great-grandfather. You boy, what is your name? Kennedy inquired in a calm but stern tone. Naruto looked at him with a bemused stare and began speaking in the language of the elemental nations, of which none of them could understand. Yeah, no, I appreciate you taking care of me and all, but can someone please tell me where the hell am I? Naruto said with a bit of bewilderment in his face. Did anyone caught any of that? A perplexed crewman inquired. We can't comprehend a thing he's saying, and apparently he can't understand our language either, Dr. Newton exclaimed. It sounds very much like Japanese, Villalobos speculated, his hand rubbing his chin. I didn't know you speak the Orient, the captain said in amusement. Oh, I'm quite fluent at it. You see, there's this beautiful Japanese girl I met in Manila when I was but a young lad serving as a cabin boy for a merchant galleon, several years ago. She taught me a few words and a few more other things, if you know what I mean. Villalobos reminisced in a jolly tone that made him and the rest of the crew burst in a roaring belly laugh. Then talk to him, Kennedy instructed the Spaniard with an impassive face. So Villalobos did as he was ordered and started speaking in a heavily accented Japanese, asking the boy his name. Modern Nihongo is a linguistic evolution of the more archaic language of the elemental nations, and thus Naruto found it to be only partially intelligible, but he caught enough words to deduce his inquirer's question. Naruto, he replied, pointing a finger to himself. What did he say? Kennedy queried. I think he said his name is Naruto, Villalobos replied, uncertain. Very well then, Mr. Naruto, welcome to the Isabel, Kennedy exclaimed, extending his arm for a handshake. Though he couldn't understand the strange man in front of him, Naruto knew that he is extending a gesture of friendship, and so he responded. But as soon as their hands made contact, Naruto, through his latent six-path sage power, has inadvertently gazed into the mind of William Kennedy and saw what the latter saw in his lifetime and learned much from it, including the English language. Whoa, what was that? Naruto said in English as he recovered from the confounding experience. I thought he couldn't speak English, the captain said, more suspicious than confused. I do now. Naruto shrugged, dumbfounding everyone. As to how he did it, he never told them. Days have passed and the crew's suspicion of the shinobi has eventually quelled. He befriended them, and using the knowledge he gained from William Kennedy's mind, Naruto fabricated a story to satisfy their curiosity. He told them that he was in the service of a merchant ship, acting as a translator. One day, as their ship was en route to Acapulco, a violent storm appeared out of nowhere, battering them with violent winds and colossal waves. The last thing he remembered was a large waterspout approaching their vessel, violently reaping its foresail and breaking a mast before he felt a debris struck his head and blacked out. Everyone who heard his story became pale and felt their blood curdled, as the horrific account is nothing short of every seafarer's nightmare. They pitied Naruto, but at the same time felt a huge pride for him, as it's quite rare indeed to see what he saw and live to tell the tale. Months have passed and the Isabel reached London. Naruto decided to explore this new world and learn everything he could from it. He bid farewell to the crew of the Isabel and thanked them once more for the kindness they showed him. Years have passed and Naruto learned the existence of curious creatures living in the sewers of London. They look like ordinary men and women, but much paler. They have cold skin, red eyes, and fed on the blood of humans to sustain their own damned existence. He decided to observe these cloistered beings and study them and their behavior. It seemed that their reflexes and agility are much faster than what modern humans are able to see. They also have sharper and more attuned senses designed to track and predict their prey like apex predators. According to the stories he heard, these undead beings are called vampires. They subsist by feeding on the life essence of living creatures, specifically their blood. When it became clear to Naruto that these vampires were beyond any help and are a threat to the people living above, he decided to destroy them as humanely as possible with powerful fire jutsus. Curiously, he also discovered that some of these vampires have special abilities like telepathy and lesser element manipulation, though these abilities are inferior and less versatile compared to those possessed by any given jonin or talented shunin. He hypothesized that these rare individuals may have been descended from the shinobis who survived the destruction of the elemental nations, and the same process that turned them into undead beings may have also awakened the latent powers of their lineage. He became much engrossed studying these creatures, for he thought that they would be the key to unlock the elusive mysteries of the past. His quest has led him to travel all over the known world and beheld strange and fascinating things and beings alike. Such of these are the feral werewolves that reminded him so much of the Inuzuka clan, Kiba and Akamaru in particular. On one of his travels to Italy, he encountered a vampire named Carlisle Cullen who he found interesting, for he is unlike the rest of his kind. This vampire prefers to drink animal blood. This is due to his belief that it's much more humane than drinking the blood of humans, thereby killing them. He revealed himself to the Carlisle, who found him equally fascinating as well. For the latter never saw the kind of immortality Naruto has. They became good friends, and in time Naruto told him the truth about himself and how he acquired his immortality. He told him about how the 10 tails sealed in him supercharged the longevity and regenerative abilities of his Uzumaki lineage to the point of agelessness and immortality. Any damage he sustains, which requires an immensely powerful force, instantly need up within moments as if it was never inflicted on the first place. He no longer needs to eat nor drink for nourishment due to the fact that he passively absorbs and assimilates nature energy that fuels him, though he does eat food nonetheless for the pleasure of it and because it reminds him of his humanity. Years have passed yet again, and Carlisle decided to move to the New Worlds, feeling that there's nothing more for him left in Europe and citing the possibilities of a new and more prolific life in the Americas. Soon after, Naruto decided to migrate as well. Late 1800s, Texas. It was in the apex of the Southern Vampire War that Naruto landed on the shores of the United States. He traveled for a while, then decided to settle in Pleasanton, a sleepy little community at the time, south of San Antonio. The town is indeed true to its name, for he found the weather and the simple folks living there to be no less than pleasant. "I can get used to this," he said with a smile on his face while basking in the gentle rays of the autumnal sun. He had settled in town for about 4 years and a half now, and built a cozy and lofty house near what is now known today as Ruby Hill. Though he occasionally sends his shadow clones far and wide to investigate. Everybody knows him as the luckiest young prospector on the face of the earth, for he always came back in town from his numerous year-long expeditions with a satchel full of gold. In reality, the gold is a product of a jutsu he developed by combining earth element transformation and magnet release chakra to mystically extract any kind of metal from crude ores, and later on he became so proficient at the technique that he was able to extract metals such as gold to its purest form on the very landscape he is standing on. Young women would always blush and giggle at the sight of him, for he is the most eligible bachelor in town. This is not only in part due to his extraordinary good looks but also because of his affluence. Though people can't help but wonder why hadn't he found himself a wife, or at the very least doesn't hire any domestic help. He is a wealthy man after all, and frugality isn't really a mandatory virtue. Furthermore, his residence is quite sizable and maintaining it would require a servant or two. To all who curiously asked him such questions, he just responded that he values his privacy and enjoys living a bachelor's life. One winter night he encountered a group of vampires who killed a local man. 3 of them were newborns, and the last one is a blonde male wearing a Confederate uniform, his skin covered with scars from past battles. Though these scars are normally invisible to humans, they are his dominant features when viewed by others with supernatural eyesight. Not only did Naruto instantly scrutinize the fact that he is the leader of the group, but also discerned the vampire's somewhat slight hesitation to kill humans. As soon as they noticed Naruto, the newborn vampires attacked without hesitation, as they thought him as another easy meal. The shinobi then proceeded to efficiently dispatch them all in a split-second, save for the leader, who was now awe-stricken, for he never encountered any creature, let alone a human being, able to do that. "Say, what's your name, soldier?" Naruto said. "Jasper Whitlock," the vampire responded. Naruto found him quite amusing, similar to when he first met Carlisle. To Jasper's surprise, Naruto did not only spare his life that night but also offered him another option to live. He found this difficult to believe and it confounded him. He retreated back to his coven and never told anyone what happened that night. Naruto has lived a peaceful and blissful life in that sleepy town, but alas, it's time to move on. Less than pleasant gossips and rumors about him are quickly spreading, and the superstitious townsfolk has made themselves scarce in his presence, for they have scrutinized some truth from the malicious whispers, such as the fact that he didn't look a day older since he first set foot on Pleasanton, more than a decade ago. He decided to sell his estate and move north, but before he left, he cast a powerful genjutsu on the townspeople that made them believe that nothing is amiss. He then heard stories of Quileute shapeshifters that can transform into wolves at will, so he went in search of them but ended up slightly disappointed after he found out that the transformation process is some sort of defensive response. This means that their lycanthrope shifting ability could only be initialized by having a vampire present to trigger it on a genetic level, but for generations such creatures has not been seen, and the last remaining Quileute elder who have the power to transform is on his deathbed. Interestingly, he found out that once activated they can consciously control their shifting and are aware of their actions while in wolf form, unlike werewolves who can only transform at the phase of the full moon and on the process loses their self-awareness in lieu of bloodthirsty feral rage. Another 26 years swiftly passed, seemingly like a feather that has fallen from the wings of a soaring falcon. During this interim, Naruto has traveled all around the world and studied in the most respected universities and under the most preeminent intellectuals the sciences of archaeology, biology and genetics, a relatively new kind of discipline at the time, as well as the contemporary theories of evolution of that period. Though it is not in his character to seek answers in the academe, the wisdom and aspect of Hagoromo Otsutsuki embedded on the totality of his personality has discerned it necessary to further his search for answers. Unfortunately, things took a turn for the worst as his theory regarding the shapeshifter's transformation and the special abilities of some vampires has been unfounded. He discovered that these gifts are wrought through evolutionary mutations or may be entirely supernatural in some cases, but has no connection to Kekkei Genkai nor chakra, thus ruling out the possibility that they are descendants of survivors from the elemental nations. This had depressed and disheartened the shinobi so much and was about to give up on his hopes when he encountered an old friend on one of his travels to Washington. It was Carlyle. They haven't seen each other for roughly 60 years now. To Naruto's surprise, Carlyle has some company with him. He introduced the shinobi to Esme, Edward, Rosalie and Emmett. It would seem that all this time he found himself a new family. Interestingly, Jasper, the vampire he encountered and decided to spare in the past, is now a member of Carlyle's coven along with his mate, Alice. Jasper was equally surprised seeing the shinobi again and knowing that he and Carlyle knew each other. Naruto was then further flabbergasted when Carlyle suddenly invited him to be a member of his family, which he graciously accepted. Though, he found it a little bit amusing to pose as Carlyle's adopted son due to the fact that he is technically thousands of years older than him. Naruto Cullen, I don't know. It sounds a little weird, ya. No, Naruto hummed with a stoic face. Well, we could always go with any name you see fit, old friend, Carlyle chuckled. Naruto Uzumaki. I want to use the name my parents gave me to honor the legacy of the elemental nations and so that it would always remind me of my heritage and my quest. Naruto exclaimed with the will of fire burning in his eyes. It's settled then. Welcome to the family, Naruto Uzumaki, Carlyle said with a gentle smile. The shinobi felt elated and his depression was partially appeased from the unexpected serendipity. It reminded him of the nostalgic bliss of having friends and family once more. Chapter 2. A Lucid Dream. Time has continued to flow like a stream and everyone and everything around has aged and withered save for the immortals who remained unchanged and unspoiled by its touch. The Cullens made their abode in Alaska for quite a while, alongside with a coven of kindred vegetarian vampires, the Denali Coven. Due to the similarities in diet and philosophy, they coexisted peacefully and became great friends and allies to the point that they even considered themselves an extended family of one another. However, due to these parallels and along with their combined numbers, they began to attract the attention of other vampires, the most dangerous ones in particular. The Volturi has become increasingly suspicious of the potential threat they may pose and has issued their concern with a subtle but stern warning. The only thing preventing the predominant coven from swiftly taking action is the healthy fear they developed from witnessing Naruto dispose several of their guards with ease years ago, and his warning that they will suffer the same fate if they ever crossed his path. The Cullens nonetheless decided to move back to Forks in order to avoid further conflict. They knew that Ephraim and the rest of his pack are long dead when they moved back. Though, they still chose to honor the treaty they made in the past and stayed away from Quileute lands. Washington 2010. It was drizzling when Bella landed on Port Angeles. The rather gloomy weather gave her a creeping nostalgia of bright warm Arizona, but has already come to terms and said her goodbyes to the sun when she decided to move. She saw Charlie, still in uniform, waiting for her as she got off the plane. He must have just left work, Bella thought. In the Olympic Peninsula of the state of Washington, under a near-constant cover of clouds and rain, there is a small town named Forks, population 3,120 people. Here is where she's moving. The drive was fairly lengthy and there was an uncomfortable silence between them. Bella's eyes were animate, observing the pristine and unspoiled green environment of his new home, but her sight never dared venture to the driver's seat where Charlie is gawkily thinking of a good topic to start a conversation with his daughter. "Your hair got longer," Charlie said, finally breaking the awkward silence. "I've cut it since last you saw me," Bella responded. "Well, I guess it grew out again," Charlie said, gawking as he continued to drive. Finally they've arrived. Bella got off from the car. It was freezing, but nonetheless she took a moment to gaze at a familiar sight. Charlie's house hadn't changed at all. It will be her new home. She remembered that she used to spend 2 weeks there almost every summer, but it has been years. She turned back to Charlie, who was having a little trouble unloading her suitcase from the car, but finally managed to before she could help him. As Bella entered her room, the first thing she saw was the purple bed cover. Charlie seemed to notice her daughter's distraction as she stared quite peculiarly on the plum-colored linens. The sales lady picked the bed stuff. "You like purple, right?" Charlie asked, rather uncomfortably. "Purple's cool. Thanks, Dad," Bella replied. That gave Charlie much relief as he made his way downstairs. One of the best things about Charlie is that he doesn't hover and respected her daughter's privacy. Bella, being used to her mother's eccentric perceptiveness, saw this as a refreshing novelty. Even though they hardly talk, the two know for a fact that they care deeply for each other. Bella sat down on her bed thinking of the life she left in Arizona for Forks. As nostalgia and glum began to trickle in, she felt a longing for the dry air and warm sunlight she was accustomed to. Suddenly she heard noises and a car blowing its horn outside. "Looks like they have some visitors." She saw a middle-aged man in a wheelchair wearing a hat and was being pushed up the drive by a good-looking boy just a couple of years younger than she is. The latter had long glossy black hair, russet skin and dark eyes that set deep above the high planes of his cheekbones. Though, he still had just a hint of childish roundness left around his chin. "Bella, you remember Billy Black?" Charlie introduced her to the man in the wheelchair. "Yeah, you're looking good," Bella replied with a smile as she shook the hands of Billy. "Well, I'm still dancing. I am glad you're finally here. Charlie here hasn't shut up about it since you told him you're coming," Billy wittily said. That made Charlie a bit embarrassed about it. "All right, keep exaggerating. I'll roll you into the mud," Charlie shrugged. "After I ram you into the ankle," Billy bombastically replied. That made the two grown men play around boisterously in a mock fight. The boy laughed at the two, then turned her attention to Bella. "Hi, I'm Jacob. We used to make mud pies when we're little," the boy said with a friendly smile as he introduced himself. "Right, I remember," Bella replied with a half smile. "Are they always like this?" She then inquired, looking at both Billy and Charlie jauntily roughhousing like immature boys. "It's getting worse with old age," Jacob said. That made both of them laugh. "So, what do you think?" Charlie said as he walked towards them. "What?" Bella queried, confused. "Your homecoming present," Charlie responded while leaning on a red truck that has been parked in the drive. "This?" Bella replied, astonished. Her eyes sparkled with joy like that of a little girl. "Just bought it from Billy here," Charlie said. "Yep," Billy seconded. "I totally rebuilt the engine for you," Jacob supplied. "Oh my gosh, this is perfect." Bella was more than delighted and has a big smile on her face. She was quite excited and decided to take her new ride for a test run. It would seem that the sunless day has just lightened up and everything at that point was perfect, save for Jacob's right knee, who Bella accidentally hit with the door when she got on the truck. "I told you she'll love it. I'm down with the kids," Billy said with a teen-like swagger. "Oh yeah dude, you're the bomb," Charlie retorted with a deadpan face and in a sarcastic tone. "Okay, listen, you got to double pump the clutch when you shift, but besides that, you should be good," Jacob enthusiastically instructed Bella with the subtle complexities of her new machine. "That's this one. Yeah, right there. Alright, so do you want a ride to school or something?" Bella offered in a hopeful tone. "Oh, I go to school on the reservation," Jacob said. He felt sorry after seeing her face reformed from extremely happy to a little blue. Right, that's too bad. It would have been nice to know one person," Bella said in a gloomy tone, her face emanating a trace of slight frustration. It was raining. The landscape was littered with the bodies of slain shinobi. Their blood mixed with the rain water that cascaded from the mountains like a river, painting the landscape in bright gushing crimson. They've all sacrificed their lives to give Naruto and Sasuke enough time to seal the rampaging Jubi. "Kirin," Sasuke yelled, activating the jutsu. Thunder crackled from the storm clouds above as an immense dragon made of lightning formed. He then guided it to its target, engulfing the 10 tails in a bright thunderous flash. Sage Art. Lava Release Rasenshuriken. Naruto and innumerable of his shadow clones synergized their attack with Sasuke, creating hundreds of dilating vortexes of lightning-enhanced infernal cyclones that would vaporize an entire city in a blink of an eye. It was a spectacular sight. Their combined jutsus shattered half of the mountain range the size of Manhattan and reduced to dust anything within ground zero, creating a multi-mile-wide smoldering crater. The beast, however, appears relatively unharmed as it emerged, still crackling with arcs of lightning and molten rock dripping from its unscathed hide. Now, both of the shinobi roared as they folded their hands into seals and simultaneously slammed their palms into the beast that activated an extremely powerful fuinjutsu which would seal it forever. The Jubi screeched as the sealing formula spread all over its body and began to enclose and confine the mighty beast. "It's over. Sasuke coldly said, but was cut off short when he felt a sharp pain on his chest. The Jubi has traded a final parting shot. One of its tails has pierced his back all the way through his chest like a spear, impaling the Uchiha. Naruto, Sasuke barely muttered in a weary voice. Blood gushed from his mouth as he collapsed to the ground, the life in his eyes slowly faded and he ceased to be. Though, he died with a smile on his face, knowing that he honorably fought side by side, until the very end, with whom he considered to be the nearest thing he had to a best friend. Naruto was paralyzed with overwhelming grief. Unable to say nor do anything, tears fell from his azure eyes as he saw his childhood friend lay cold in the dirt and shattered rocks. Sasuke's blood dripped from his wounds into the hidden leaf crest of the now misshapen forehead protector that he had secretly kept and always carried with him since he defected from Konoha. Naruto then let out a cry of pure and undiluted anguish that echoed and reverberated into the nearby rock formations like a requiem of melancholy. He stared into the heavens asking for answers. "Why?" is the only word he was able to mutter. His glum musing was suddenly distracted by a radiating colossal ball of energy. The ceiling has been all but completed. All it needs is a container to be the Jubi's Jinchuriki. The Fuinjutsu then latched itself to Naruto, due in part from being its caster and the fact that he was the only living being left in the vicinity. The process was profoundly excruciating, like being cut and burned by tens of thousands of red-hot knives at the same time. The agonizing ordeal, coupled with the weariness of battle, has made Naruto black out and lose consciousness. But before the light completely left his eyes, he saw a surreal figure perched on a nearby precipice as if it was spectating the events unfold with amusement and curiosity. It has diaphanous wings made from streams of light that fluttered into the air and is engulfed by a cloak of fiery energy that seemed to make the strange creature shimmer like a quivering bowstring. It's all that he could remember before darkness overtook him in its pitch-black embrace. Naruto's eyes snapped open and found himself in his room. He hadn't had that dream for a long time now. Thousands of years have passed, but the pain still felt like it has just been freshly inflicted. He got off from his bed and brooded in a corner for what seemed to be an eternity. Suddenly, a phantasmagoria of the bustling streets of Konoha flashed in his mind. He vividly recalled that one particular day at Ramen Ichiraku. It was a fairly sunny day, they've just returned from the land of spring after completing a rather extraordinary mission. Chuki Inuyame was busy tending with more customers than usual, and the streets were filled with clamor and tumult from the outside parties for the people was celebrating the Hanami festival. He remembered Kakashi-sensei, Sakura, Sasuke and himself slurping ramen and recounting the funny encounters they had from the said assignment. He remembered how happy they were that day, even the aloof and stoic Uchiha occasionally let out a half-suppressed chortle. It was nothing short of pure bliss. But everything has to come to an end. He felt a nostalgic dejection as he remembered when they bid their farewells to each other to retire for the day. He remembered seeing his sensei and friends go and part ways, walking further and further until he can no longer see their silhouettes, while he was left alone in a crossroad from which he can never follow them. What would he not give to relive even just a single hour of that day? But what's gone is gone and cannot be brought back. The truth is painful, it always is. Finally, he regained his senses back. Brushing off his melancholy, Naruto stood up and composed himself. Maybe in time, the truth of what happened to my people will be revealed, and if what I saw that day isn't just a figment of my imagination, I will find out, Naruto mused in a hollow voice as he gazed at the star-riddled sky from the window of his room. Forks High School, the next day. A faded red 1963 Chevy pickup truck pulled over and parked itself on the school's parking lot, but as soon as it stopped, the vehicle backfired, producing a loud popping noise and a puff of black smoke, earning the condescending stares and unkind mocking grin of some students who perceived it to be nothing more than an eyesore. Bella got off the truck. She decided to ignore the rustling whispers and just set about her business, evading as much attention as possible. She headed to the reception where she was entertained by Ms. Cope, a gentle plump woman with short gray hair and visible laugh lines on her face. She handed Bella a list of her class schedules, along with a map of the school and slips for the teachers to sign. As she walked past the corridors, on her way to her first period, a young man of Asian descent approached her. He was a cheerful guy and somewhat a bit geeky, Bella thought. He was wearing a dark blue shirt and tie, giving him a semi-corporate look. "You're Isabella Swan, the new girl. Hi, I'm Eric, the eyes and ears of this place." Eric introduced himself in friendly and merry manner. Anything you need. Tour guide, lunch date, shoulder to cry on. The overly helpful young man continued. "I'm really kind of the more sufferer in silence type," Bella replied, cordially and with a vague smile. "Good headline for your feature. I'm on the paper, and your news baby, front page," Eric said ecstatically and with a big smile on his face. "No, I'm not. You, please don't have any sort of," Bella awkwardly and stutteringly mumbled in surprise. "Chillax. No feature," Eric said in a lay before Bella was able to finish her incoherent objection. "Okay, thanks," Bella said, more than relieved. "Cool," Eric inquired to make sure that any awkwardness between them has been dispelled. Bella's attention was suddenly diverted when she saw a handsome blonde youth. It was Naruto. His unruly and spiky blonde hair was like the intense golden rays of a winter sunrise. He sports a richly tanned skin, which was something of an attractive novelty for her. He also had whisker marks on his face that only sharpened his striking good looks. Though, he seemed to be pensive that day, as if in deep thought of something profound and prodigious. Ignoring the pleasantries and niceties of the flushed young women who hovered around him like flies, he continued to stride until he walked past Bella and Eric. "Who's he?" Bella involuntarily muttered loud enough for Eric to hear her. "Oh, him. That's Naruto," he replied with just enough tremble in his voice to conceal his dejection and trepidation as he beheld the stiff competition. Gym class. There was a rustle of activity and chattering inside the gym from the myriad of girls playing volleyball and boys playing basketball contra-parallel to each other. Bella grunts in awkwardness, for she's not a big fan of volleyball, or any sport for that matter. She was also worried that her God-given clumsiness may hurt or outright kill someone before the period is over. "Get it, get it, get it," a girl ecstatically said to her teammates as the ball lobed through their court. Another girl swiftly spiked it up and through the net of the opposing team's side, but was blocked and deflected yet again to theirs. "To you," one of the girls cried out as she reckoned that the ball's trajectory was heading to Bella's direction. Stumped, Bella deflected the ball with a gawking slap and it flew out of control. "Whoa," bellowed by a flummoxed boy who got hit at the back of his head by the stray volleyball. Bella rushed to him and apologized. "I'm sorry. I told them not to let me play." "No way. No, no, no. That's, don't. You're Isabella, right?" the boy said intermittently with a smile on his face as he was further staggered with what he thought to be a fortunate happenstance. "Just Bella," she corrected. She found him to be altogether good-looking but not her type. He has blonde hair and pale blue eyes that perfectly accented his baby face. "Yeah, hey, I'm Mike Newton." He cheerfully introduced himself in a friendly manner as he extended his arms to Bella. "Nice to meet you," Bella said, reciprocating his gesture of friendship by shaking his hands. She got a great spike right. They were suddenly interrupted by a petite, outgoing girl with straight dark brown hair and blue eyes. "Yeah, it's," Mike chuckled, holding the back of his head. "I'm Jessica, by the way." "Hey, you're from Arizona, right?" She introduced herself, followed by an inquiry. "Yeah," Bella responded. "Aren't people from Arizona supposed to be, like, really tan?" Jessica further queried. "Yeah, maybe that's why they kicked me out." Bella awkwardly mumbled in a rather quipping response that made Mike and Jessica chuckle on her reply. "You're good," Mike said as he found her statement genuinely amusing. "That's so funny," Jessica further supplemented but with a rather forced and artificial giggle. Quote, "School cafeteria, like a masterpiece, you know, we'll have, like, this crazy pyramid fall from the sky, and then you guys can." Eric was talking to someone when he saw Mike being overly helpful and uncharacteristically chivalrous. "It's my pleasure, madam," Mike said as he pulled a seat for Bella. "Burrito my friend," he then offered to the latter. "You guys can give each other high fives," Eric said, quickly concluding his current conversation to stave off Mike from being too friendly. "Hey, Mikey, you met my home girl, Bella." "Hey, oh, your home girl," Mike responded with a smile. But underneath that smile is a subliminal message telling Eric the word, mine. "Yeah," Eric responded jovially, subliminally projecting to Mike his own message, "I saw her first." "Back off, dude." "Yeah," Mike echoed as if he was telepathically telling Eric, "I don't care. You back off." Though the conversation was superficially friendly and pleasant, Mike and Eric subtly locked their eyes like a lion and a tiger trying to intimidate each other into submission. Out of the blue, Tyler kissed Bella's cheek, exclaiming, "That's my girl." Then he pulled Mike's chair, causing the latter to stumble on the floor and chase him in exasperation. Making most of the people who saw the spectacle laugh in amusement, others felt a little jealous of Bella. "Sorry to mess your game, Mike," Tyler childishly said as he was being chased by Mike. "Oh, my God, it's like first grade all over again. You're the shiny new toy," Jessica said. She wished that she was the epicenter of all this attention. But before Bella could reply, she saw Angela with a camera aimed at her. "Smile," the latter said, followed by a flash. "Okay," Bella uncomfortably muttered, overwhelmed from all the unwanted attention. "Sorry, I needed a candid for the feature," Angela then said. "The feature's dead, Angela." "Don't bring it up again," Eric chided quite harshly. "It's okay, I just," Bella said, trying to defuse the situation but was cut off. "I got your back, baby," Eric said while tapping her shoulder, as if to comfort her and project the impression of a protector. "I guess we'll just run another editorial on teen drinking," Angela said in a somber voice. "You know you can always go for eating disorders," a statement that made Jessica pause and hesitated to swallow another bite, "or speedo padding on the swim team," Bella said, trying to comfort Angela, who was visibly hurt by Eric's reprimand. "Actually, that's a good one," Angela lightened up, her eyes exponentially filled with optimism. "That's exactly what I thought." "Kirk, right," Jessica supplied. "We're talking Olympic size." "There's no way, he's so skinny it doesn't make sense," Jessica said as she described the anatomical paradox. "Totally," Angela concurred. "Yeah." As both girls giggled, Bella glanced at her shoulder and saw 6 inhumanly beautiful people entered the cafeteria. They were so graceful that it seemed like they're floating. Of the 4 were boys. One was big, muscled like a serious weightlifter and has curly dark hair. Another was taller, leaner but still muscular and honey blonde. The third is the golden-haired boy he saw earlier that day, and the last was lanky, less bulky with untidy bronze-colored hair. He was more boyish than the others save for the third. The girls with them are opposites. The tall girl has a long golden hair waving gently behind her back. She has a statuesque physique that made most other girls' self-esteem recede in her presence. The second girl was pixie-like. Her hair was a deep black, cropped short and pointing in every direction. "Who are they?" Bella inquired curiously. "They're Dr. and Mrs. Cullen's foster kids. They moved down here from Alaska, a few years ago," Jessica said in response to her inquiry. "They kinda keep to themselves," Angela further added. "Yeah, 'cause they're all together, together," Jessica said under her breath. The blonde girl, that's Rosalie, and the big dark-haired guy, Emmett. "They're like a thing. I'm not even sure that's legal." "Jess, they're not actually related," Angela said. "Yeah, but they live together. It's weird." Jessica defended her statement. "Okay, the little dark-haired girl, she's Alice. She's really weird. And she's with Jasper, the blonde one who looks like he's in pain. Dr. Cullen is like this foster dad / matchmaker." She further continued. "Maybe he'll adopt me," Angela said in a dreamy voice. "And them?" Bella further queried to point out the other two boys. "That's Edward, totally gorgeous obviously, but apparently none of the girls here are good enough for him. Like I care, you know." She laughed awkwardly, then snatched a glance at Edward, who seemed laughing at something, belying her last statement. "So, yeah, seriously though, don't waste your time," she told Bella. "I wasn't planning on it," Bella responded. Edward then glanced at Bella. His face was riddled with an uncanny expression, like that of an unmet expectation. "Oh, and the cute blonde guy with him is Naruto. Weird name, right? He's a total hottie though, and so far the most approachable and outgoing of them. But apparently he's not in a very good mood today. Maybe all he need is a girlfriend," Angela again said in a dreamy voice, though, this time she was more like supplicating to everything that is holy to be that girl. "You wish," Jessica playfully heckled, that made both girls giggle like mischievous fairies. Quote, "What's your problem now?" Rosalie scoffed at Naruto. "They only talk to each other when they absolutely have to, and whenever they do the conversation is usually fleeting and snappy. Although it may appear that she's not very fond of the shinobi and him, to her, the truth is they do care deeply for one another's well-being like real siblings." "Geez, what's it to you Goldilocks?" Naruto retorted sarcastically. "Don't you and Papa Bear over there have some smooching appointment?" He then continued. It made Emmett chuckle like an amused boy, but was immediately chastised by Rosalie's piercing stare. Naruto was well aware that she's just looking out for him, and this is his way of saying that he's fine and there's nothing to worry about. "It's that dream again, isn't it?" Jasper inquired, though he was certain that it is indeed the cause of the shinobi's wistfulness. "Yeah, how did you find out?" Naruto asked back. "We all heard you crying like a little bitch last night," Rosalie said, seizing the perfect opportunity for a riposte. "Whatever." Naruto crossed his arm and pouted. "But yeah, it was that dream. The last time I had it was back when Elvis died in the crapper. He was a big fan of Elvis, don't ask why, and he took it quite hard when the king shuffled off his mortal coil while on the throne. For them this is the closest thing to a leisurely conversation, and it assuaged their minds from the transitorily unbearable clasp of a mortal existence. It reminded them of the happiest and joy-filled hours they had in an ocean of misery and melancholy, back when they still live a mortal life." "Everything all right there, Edward?" Naruto diverged. "I can't read her thought," Edward sighed as he gazed at Bella with a bemused expression on his face. "Is that so?" Naruto said with curiosity. He then used his more potent chakra-induced telepathy to peer into Bella's mind, but he was unable to breach deep enough into her psyche and was only able to read superficial and random thoughts. "Interesting," he exclaimed with a light of enthusiasm and hope in his eyes. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.